want to read this quote to you. This is really quite good. This is Fred Goodwin was the director of NIMH for many, many years, and he's probably the most well-known, preeminent researcher in bipolar disorder in the world. Okay, and this is a quote I'm going to read to you. This comes directly from one of his patients who has bipolar illness, who's very bright, doctoral level professor, I think, who has a manic episode, and this is her description of going into a manic episode. And I want to read this because it's so articulate, and I think it really captures the experience of starting to get manic. Okay, so let me just read this to you. And what she describes first, people don't go from normal mood to mania just like that. They oftentimes pass through a period of hypomania, and then it escalates into mania. So she says, ideas are fast, like shooting stars you follow until bright ones appear. All shyness disappears. The right words and gestures are suddenly there. Uninteresting people and things become intensely interesting. Sensuality is pervasive. The desire to seduce and be seduced is irresistible. Your marrow is infused with unbelievable feelings of ease, power, well-being, omnipotence, and euphoria. Okay, now if it would just stop there, or if you could buy this in a bottle, that sounds okay to me. But here's the problem, okay, it escalates, right? She says the fast ideas become too fast. There are far too many. Overwhelming confusion replaces clarity. It's as if you were racing a motor and you kept racing and racing, and the pistons start flying out all over the place. The whole thing begins to fall apart. Overwhelming confusion. You stop keeping up with it. Memory goes. Infectious humor ceases to amuse, and your friends become frightened. Everything now is against the grain. You're irritable, angry, frightened, uncontrollable, and trapped in the blackest caves of the mind. Madness carves its own reality. Now, I want to tell you two stories about mania, okay? The first one, you may have heard this if you were in my basic foundations class, but I was in my master's degree program, and I just finished my very last class, which was statistics, and I somehow managed to pass it, and I was elated. And then that was it. I've done. I had done my thesis and everything. So I picked up my exam paper out of the, because it was a practice at the university. When exams were completed, they would just put the grade on it and put it in the classroom, and you'd pick it up and see what your grade was. So I did, and I passed. And I was like, God, I got a master's degree. I just can't believe it. So I went home, and I felt great. Okay, so I went to bed that night. 1 o'clock in the morning, I get a call from my stat teacher. Now, this guy was absolutely brilliant. Believe it or not, I had taken statistics before and kind of, felt confused most of the time. This guy was such a good teacher. He was superb. One of the best teachers I ever had. He was on the phone, and he was yelling at me and cussing at me and saying, you were not authorized to remove your exam paper from the classroom. And Preston, if you're not down at my office in 15 minutes, I'm going to see that you get kicked out of this program. This is 1 o'clock in the morning, okay? So oh my God, I jumped in the car, went like 90 miles an hour down to the campus and got there. And we had 10 students in my master's degree program, and all 9 of the others were there also. He had called every student, okay? And so we're all going, what in the hell is going on here? And so he brought us in one at a time, and I sat down there, and he just chewed me out, just cursing at me and saying, I didn't give you personal authorization to remove that paper, and I'm going to kick you out of school. And I go, oh, please don't do that, please. You're the best teacher in the world. I love you. I'm sorry. It was my fault, and all this kind of stuff. So finally he said, okay, but just get out of here, and boy, you better count your blessings because you were that far from being kicked out of this program. Okay, so I came out, and everybody's like bewildered. And I went home then. It's about 2:30 in the morning, and I had my first panic attack. Now, that probably was good because now I know what a panic attack feels like, okay? What happened was, I think for me, it pulled the rug out from under me. It completely destroyed my delusional belief that if you're a psychologist, then that means you're perfectly mentally healthy. And, you know, at that young age, I wasn't prepared, you know, to face that reality. So the next morning, the director of the program calls all the students to come to campus, and they sit down. I'm sure they consulted with their lawyer, you know. But anyway, they said, Dr. So-and-so is in the hospital. We're very sorry about what happened, but he had a manic episode. His colleagues said that for about 2 or 3 days before that, he'd been staying up like all night long, drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, and was making comments about that he just you know, hit up on this new equation that was going to revolutionize, you know, statistics, you know, and you know, help humanity or something like this. Well, he went from hypomania to a full-blown mania. So that was one of my introductions to that. Okay, baptism by fire. The other story is, you know, with many mental illnesses, things are not good early in life. I mean, kids that ultimately become schizophrenic, for instance, rarely are they totally normal and then they just have a psychotic episode. You know, we all know this, that there are prodromal symptoms, a kind of peculiar behavior, odd affect, and stuff like that. And then eventually they get more disorganized and may get psychotic. And with depression, lots of times people are going through mild depressions and eventually have major depressions. But there's something about bipolar illness that's really quite different, and that is that it can be extraordinarily severe and come on relatively suddenly in people that otherwise have heretofore been quite functional and healthy. And it's considered to be, you know, one of the major psychiatric illnesses that is largely rooted in abnormal neurobiology. And so I'll tell you about this one guy I saw. This was a physician, and I just saw him one time for an evaluation after he'd gotten out of the hospital. This guy was like 32 years old, and I actually had heard about something on the radio maybe 6 weeks before I saw this man. And it turns out that what happened is he had his first manic episode. He'd had no history of any kind of, you know, psychopathology. He had family and kids, and he was a primary care doctor and successful, again, like 32 years old. And he rather rapidly went into a manic episode. And what I had heard about on the radio was some guy getting picked up on Hazel Avenue because they were naked and they were out there chopping down a telephone pole with a chainsaw. It turns out it's his physician. And so he was now out of the hospital, and he was no longer manic, but he came in, and it destroyed his life. You know, he was telling me that he wasn't going to lose his license, but all his patients heard about it. People stopped coming to see him. Obviously, he was in the hospital for a month. And his wife was just absolutely, you know, embarrassed, and he said they're going to have to move out of state. But the reason I'm mentioning this is two things. One is that one manic episode can be absolutely devastating. It can ruin a career. Okay, people can go out. My wife had a friend who had bipolar disorder. She got manic. She went up to Lake Tahoe, and in 3 days got herself into debt, $150,000 in gambling. Okay, it can run you financially. People can go out and have sex with 20 people and, you know, get HIV. You can get drunk and kill people in a car accident. You know, I think that a lot of lay people watching made-for-TV stories about mania see sort of grandiose, elated, you know, upbeat, kind of agitated people without appreciating that manias can be catastrophic. Okay, so when we talk about treating bipolar disorder, or bipolar 1 in particular, where there's the risk of mania, I guess maybe just state the obvious, but you've got to really be extraordinarily cautious about, you know, preventing manic episodes from occurring. Okay, and lots of people are misdiagnosed. We talked about that at the end of our last class. Yesterday, after I gave my talk, 2 of the nurses that were there came up and just asked questions afterwards, and and they came up and said, you know, what you said was exactly right. It happened to my son, and in both cases, as teenagers, both of these women, their sons had been diagnosed with depression, put on antidepressants, and a month later had these huge whopping manias, you know, that were catastrophic. So avoiding, point being, long-winded version of saying manias have got to be avoided like the plague.